For the first part of this program, I'll be talking with Irene Dalis, former star of the Metropolitan Opera and now the director of Opera San Jose. I had hoped to play a selection of her recordings, but unfortunately, several years ago, her house was destroyed by fire, and all of her copies of her recordings were lost. There is only one commercially available recording of Irene Dalis. However, if one could choose only one recording, this would unquestionably be the one. It is the 1962 Bayreuth recording of Parsifal by Wagner, often considered the standard by which all other performances of the work are measured. Miss Dalis sings the role of Kundry, the wild gypsy girl who comes under the spell of the evil sorcerer Klingsor. We've been listening to one of the most incredible duets in all of opera. This is not opera, it's music drama, actually. We're listening to Act 2 of Parsifal by Richard Wagner. We heard in the role of Parsifal, Jess Thomas. The role of Klingsor was sung by Gustav Neidlinger, and the Bayreuth Festspiel Orchestra was under the direction of Hans Knappertsbusch. And it is my particular pleasure to have with me in the studio this morning the woman who gave that incredible performance of Kundry, Irene Dalis. I want to thank you very much for coming down here to spend the morning with us.
I thank you for inviting me.
As I mentioned earlier to the audience, this recording of Parsifal is generally considered the most ethereal recording of the work ever made. And that spiritual quality of this live performance is something that could probably never be achieved in a studio recording. What was the feeling amongst the cast during the recording? Would you have been surprised to learn that these performances would be so highly regarded decades later?
No, not at all, except I think we were aware of the fact that we had the world's greatest conductor for Parsifal, and he was elderly at the time. It was a case of being at the right place at the right time, and I do feel that we felt the importance of that particular recording. But when you do a live performance that's being recorded, you don't think about the recording at all. It's a performance. The disadvantage of a live performance, of course, is that you can't go back and repeat. If you have a mistake, it's there for eternity. But no, you don't think about the recording. I prefer recordings that come from live performance because I do think it does bring a real feeling of interpretation.
Now this was taken from one single performance.
One
is that right?
single performance.
Today what they usually do is take a series, when they say it's a live recording, they take a series of performances and sometimes chop them together.
This was one single performance.
Incredible.
But it was an incredible cast all the way around.
Did you know that this was going to be released as a commercial recording while you were making it, or was that a decision made after? It was during the time.
Yes.
What was it like working with Hans Knappertsbusch?
Well, Hans Knappertsbusch was, I would say, among my very favorite conductors. This was a type of conductor that didn't give a cue. He gave an invitation, is the way I felt. I felt that the way he would look, the feeling was, anytime you're ready, I'm ready. It was never... He was the only conductor that I worked with that had the ability to take the slow tempi that he could take, and they would still flow. And that's a great talent. He kept the orchestra under the voice. Of course, in Bayreuth, that's not really a big problem, as it is in our houses in America, the great advantage of having the orchestra under the stage. Richard Wagner designed the Festspiel house himself, and he has the orchestra under the stage. From the audience, you do not see the conductor.
And the acoustics are some of the best that you'll find anywhere. You can hear absolutely everything.
Well, actually, it was supposed to be a temporary theater, but they found the acoustics were so ideal, they haven't changed them yet.
That's right. I guess the old wooden seats are still in place. The expensive seats are the hard wooden seats.
That's right. You take a pillow with you.
They have changed and put in some comfortable seats up in the balcony. I know I did sit in one of those at one time. They don't dare mess with the acoustics.
Anybody who does Wagner really must sing Wagner in Bayreuth because of the hour intermissions alone are a great help. Because the roles written by Wagner are taxing, they are fatiguing, and there is an advantage of being able to rest between acts.
Lord, the idea of singing for an hour and then having a 10 or 15 minute intermission and coming out to sing again for that amount of time is ridiculous.
After having hung up the career quite a few years ago, I can really now look back. And the way I know whether a composer is great or not is, do I still remember the roles? I think every note of Wagner, every role I performed of Wagner, I think I could do, if I still had a voice, which I don't have, but if I did, on an hour's notice, because it was so ideally written for the voice. The words were so amalgamated with the right notes, the right phrasing. It is a genius, work of a genius.
Well, I think many of us think that we could sing the roles also if we had a voice. Tell me a little bit about how you saw the character of Kundry. How did you go about presenting her on stage?
Well, Kundry is, well, as I think I told you before, Canopic was the first person to tell me that Kundry is the most difficult role ever composed by Wagner. I never thought about that.
That's interesting. Was he talking about women's roles? I mean, was he including Siegfried in
He was
that
including all roles.
Really?
Although, in essence, the role of Kundry is only that 45-minute second act. But within 45 minutes, the Kundry is required to have the raucous voice that is necessary in the scene with Klingsor. And then, during the scene of the Blumenmädchen with Parsifal, she changes into this raving beauty, and the voice changes, too, into almost a lyric soprano for quite a while. Much middle voice. Now, first in the first scene, it's low Gs. I mean, it's a contralto role. Then it goes into lyric soprano, and before the end of the act, it's a dramatic soprano. So it runs the gamut of a vocal range, in addition to running the gamut of every conceivable emotion a woman could have in an entire lifetime. It's all there. So, yes, it is. I wouldn't say it was more difficult. I think Lady Macbeth had its moments that were far more difficult. I think the Amme in Die Frauenschatten was quite a gymnastic feat compared to Kundry. But yes, it does demand a wide range with many different colors. What more can I say?
You were known for having an exceptionally large repertoire. I think I read somewhere that you had actually sung every major role in the works of Verdi, Wagner, and Strauss. That's incredible.
Every major dramatic mezzo-soprano role. But in Strauss, I never did do Octavian, because I was always built on rather heroic proportions. I never would have looked good in pants. But no, I was very lucky in my career. It is true. I performed every role I would want to perform. I never did Carmen, for instance. It's another role I never did, although I was constantly asked to perform Carmen. I just couldn't see myself in the role. No, I was the type that you sent out on stage to kill somebody or see that they would be killed. I was the heavy in opera.
But you did tell me that you recorded one or two of the arias from Carmen on record.
Yes. Oh, I have a couple of recordings. I have the Querschnitt, they call it. Excerpts from Carmen in German.
In German.
Everyone thought at the beginning of my career in Germany that I definitely would be a Carmen, except I. I was always the one that knew I would never do it.
Well, which roles gave you the most satisfaction?
Oh, that's a hard question when you look back over a career. Let me think for a moment. Did I have a favorite role? I'd have to say I'm grateful to the role of Princess Eberli, because that's the role. That was my very first role on stage.
That was your debut at the Metropolitan
Opera. And my
Opera.
very first role at all on stage. I mean, I started in a very small provincial opera company in northern Germany. I'd never been on stage. I'd never had any acting. And my first role was Princess Eberli in Don Carlo. And then it was my first important role in the Berlin Opera. I made my debut at the Metropolitan Opera with it, San Francisco Opera, and it was on and on and on. So it became my visiting card. So I'm very grateful to that role. But I think maybe one of my favorite roles was Lady Macbeth. And it's strange.
Now this is the Verdi as opposed to the Shostakovich.
Verdi, which is a role that can be done by a dramatic soprano or a dramatic mezzo. But I would think it's more appropriate for a dramatic mezzo. It has, I know Birgit Nielsen once told me too, there's a phrase in there that really you have to be a mezzo to sing. But favorite roles, Kundry was a favorite role, I must say. I did not do Isolde enough times to know. I think it would have developed to have been my favorite. However, I made a pact with myself. When Kurt Herbert Adler talked me into doing Isolde in San Francisco, I made a pact with myself that if I could get through that production and do the performances that I was required to do, I would never sing it again. But after the fourth performance, I noticed again that this great myth about Isolde being so difficult is not entirely true if you can pace correctly. So, favorite roles. Actually, I don't think I did a role I didn't like. I refused roles I didn't like. For instance, I only sang Laura once in Gioconda, and I took it out of my repertoire. That's not for me. Let's see, what else? Marina in Boris. I think I did 2 productions and took it out of my repertoire.
Oh, why would that be?
I just didn't feel that it was challenging enough. Then I remember the scene opens in German. The words were langweilig bin ich, ach wie langweilig. It means, oh, how bored I am. And I used to feel that way, literally. So I took that out of my repertoire. I think about the only role I kept in repertoire that I would say was not a favorite of mine was Herodias in Salome. However, the piece itself is so spectacular, I enjoyed being on stage. And I'm afraid that I may be remembered 100 years from now only for that role, because there's a very famous picture, I mean, it's the one that's published in all the books, with Birgit Nielsen downstage as Salome and me upstage reclining on a sofa as Herodias, and I'm afraid that's going to be the role that I will be remembered for.
Well, perhaps that, or perhaps this recording that we just listened to. It is a pity that there aren't more recordings of your voice available. Are there recordings of you at some recording company that are in the can that could be released?
Telefunken. I made some recordings there. You know, in my career, which was a very strange career when one looks at it, I never had a manager. So although I never had to worry about contracts, my name never came up at a casting table for recordings because there wasn't a manager, is what I keep telling myself. And it bothered me for a while, except now I'm very aware that the 29 broadcasts that I did from the Metropolitan are circulating. And as a matter of fact, they just, about 3 years ago, they issued a recording in Italy of an Aida from the Met, which none of us knew about. And that's available. I don't have it. I lost my entire collection. My house burned down 2 years ago, so I lost everything. However, people have been calling and writing from all over and asking me if I would like to have a tape. So my tapes are out there, and perhaps people will remember me that way. It's not really important.
Well, from the singing that we heard just a few minutes ago, I hope somebody does come out with a collection of
What I
excerpts.
do regret is that the Live from the Met started the year I retired.
Oh.
That's what I regret. I would love to have had the Die Frauen Schatten from the Metropolitan
yes.
on a video. I would love to have had the Macbeth. I mean, all the broadcasts I did, I'd love to have 1 or 2 of those. And there's another role. Oh, the role that I really loved was the role of Kostelniczka in Janufa. Was one of my favorite roles. And I would like to have had that on video, because that was more it's an acting role, but it also requires, again, that same kind of a voice that could be a dramatic soprano or a mezzo.
So you went for the big challenges.
Now that I'm talking to you, that the roles that I was best known for were roles that could be done by either.
I should say that you are listening to the morning concert on KPFA and KPFB in Berkeley, KFCF in Fresno. Program is Vocalese, and I'm talking with Irene Dalis. Tell us a little bit about how you began singing. You're a San Jose native, as I understand. How did you begin singing down in San Jose?
That's true. I was born in San Jose, California. Actually, my whole life is a paradox. I think I'm a paradox. I went to San Jose State University, and my degree was in music education, and my major was in piano. It was not voice. Where I was lucky there, at the time I went to San Jose State, you had to take placement examinations also in the vocal department. Now, the entire vocal department at that time was one woman. Not now. I mean, now we have 5 voice teachers. It's a real department. But Then it was only one woman, and she suggested that I be a double major, and no one could be a double major anymore. So for 4 years, I did take class voice, but I didn't take it seriously. I was a pianist. And when I went to school during the war, and I had a sister in my life that played a big role. She was my piano teacher, actually. And through her, I could read music before I could read the English language. And she had told me if I would graduate with honors, she would send me anywhere in the world for my master's. So I went to New York City, again, to get my master's in music education, not as a performer. I went to Columbia University Teachers College. And it was during that time, again, my sister suggested that since I was going to be in New York, that was famous for voice teachers, that I should take the advantage of being there and study. So I studied privately for the first time, flew home for Christmas, and as was the habit in my family, my father was a Greek immigrant. And I was the youngest of 5 children. And his idea of a good evening at home was to have his children entertain him. Everybody would play an instrument or sing. So I sang, and my sister took me aside and she said, "You sounded better before you ever studied." Because I started being very self-conscious. And at the airport, my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, said, "Your sister and I want you to study with a master or none at all. Please, you only have 6 months, take advantage." And they made it possible. And I can't tell you that story. It would take the whole 2 hours. But I did find a master. And her name was Edith Walker. She was 80 years old, and she was an American singer who had made her career at the turn of the century, the Vienna Staatsoper, Bayreuth Festspiel, Metropolitan, the whole thing, who recognized in me a voice. And she said she had always wanted to have a totally untrained voice to train before she died. And she was a visionary of a type. It was amazing. I'd arrived for a lesson. First of all, she would not accept anybody who would take less than 3 lessons a week. And she only accepted 4 students. And she was very eccentric, very, very demanding. I was hypnotized by her, really. But I'd walk in, and one day she was playing an aria from Lady Macbeth, from Macbeth. At that time, Macbeth was not in repertoire anywhere. It was not until Maria Callas came on the picture was it put into repertoire. And she said, "One day you will sing this role at the Metropolitan Opera, so you'd better learn the 3 arias." Another day I walked in, and she was playing the overture to Tristan und Isolde. And she says, "One day you will sing Isolde." And it all happened. The Parsifal, these roles that she said one day. And when they would happen, I would think about her. But just before she died, and she died before my training was really completed, she died at a time when I was coming along. The way you made your debut onto the music stage was in a town hall recital. And at the time that she died, we were negotiating with Sal Hurock for my town hall recital. And about a week before she died, she called me to her and she says, "Dallas, they are going to want to send you out on stage as a mezzo-soprano. You are not a mezzo-soprano, you are a dramatic soprano, and if you go out as anything less than a dramatic soprano, I will haunt you." And honestly, for 20 years, 25 years, she haunted me. What happened is I received a Fulbright Award for study in Milano. So I had the 2 years of study in New York and then 2 years in Milano, and then I sang, and this is where I was just plain lucky. I sang 1 audition and had my first contract, and I don't think I ever really had to audition again, except I did have to sing for Rudolph Bing. So it was a very strange career. I was 2 years in Oldenburg, that's in northern Germany, where I sang only leading roles. I then went to the Berlin Opera as a leading mezzo, and 2 years later, I made my debut at the Metropolitan Opera. So it's a crazy career. I just had the good luck to be in the right place at the right time, all the time, and was always surrounded by giants on stage. I will never in my life forget the moment I was ushered to my first rehearsal at the Metropolitan Opera. Max Rudolph was the artistic, assistant, and he took me up to the roof stage at the Old Met, opened the door, and before me stood Jussi Björling, who was an idol of mine, Cesare Siepi as King Philip, and Ettore Bastianini, if you know that voice,
Yes.
as Posa,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and Delia Rigal as a soprano. And I was so struck that I was frozen. I couldn't step in the door. Now, when you're surrounded by giants of that magnitude, you automatically become better than you even dream you can be. It's true inspiration. Now, though, way down underneath, now that I'm as old as I am, that doesn't even sound right. I have the advantage at my age to be able to
Yes.
look back over
Much
many
better.
years
Much
of
better.
a career. I feel very deeply that I was allowed to have that career so I could return home and build the opera company I'm presently building. I firmly believe that. And I think I'm very lucky in that, too, that I returned to San Jose at the right time, just when San Jose was emerging. It was becoming changing from the small town to a big city, which is what it is. And the cultural life was barren. And in the last 12 years, what has happened in San Jose is remarkable. We have a long way to go, but already what has happened is quite amazing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the company that you built, the Opera San Jose. This is a company that came about through your work at San Jose State University to begin with.
That's right. What brought me home was a presidential appointment to join the faculty at San Jose State. And they really didn't know what to do with me because I couldn't teach voice. And they put me in charge of something called Opera Workshop. And I'd never seen an opera workshop. I never knew what I didn't even know what an opera workshop was. But fortunately, at the same time I took the opera workshop over, a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Rohrbaugh joined the faculty at the same time. And he and I have been he's the music director, and I'm the general director, so to speak, created this opera workshop that turned out to be, I would say, even a surprise for us. The amount of talent that came was so inspiring, and it was so obvious that these singers needed some vehicle in which they could spend time actually performing. And there was no theater on campus, so I did what I thought I had to do, was go out and get a support organization going. And actually, we started, I would say, in 1978, 79, and we had 5 name changes before we became Opera San Jose. That was in the 1984-85 season is actually when Opera San Jose started. So we're in our 9th year. It is fully professional. We still do have the workshop at the university, though. This company is, I believe, my life's work. And this company, if you allow me to tell you, I'd like to talk about Opera San Jose.
Please do.
Eat, drink, and sleep. Opera San Jose
Please do.
Is unique in America, in that we are the only company in America which hires singers by the year, for the entire year. They are under contract to Opera San Jose. And this company concentrates on career entry-level singers. You're not ready to perform at the Metropolitan Opera after you have a master's degree in voice from any university. There is that gray area in there. And it's very clear that you can train a student, a singer, a voice. A singer can be trained in a studio. But a performer can only be developed in one way, and that is by repeated performances. Of course, we like them to be repeated professional performances, because you get a certain amount of experience in these amateur groups, of which there are a multitude. And I should take aside, do you know that there are 22 opera companies alone in the state of California? That was something that did not exist when I was coming along. So it is becoming a little easier for singers to get experience. However, most people at a certain stage of their development are going to have to wait on tables or work as a computer inputter or work all night at the local newspaper in order to make enough money to carry on what they really want to do, and that's singing. Now, when I was going to make this statement one day to our board of trustees, I wanted to say this is the only company of its type in America, and I thought, well, wait a minute, you can't say that unless you're sure. So I called. At that time, there was a Central Opera Service in New York, and I said, I have to know. I can't make a statement like this if it's not true. So 4 hours later, I had the call and says, yes, it is true. You are the only one. There are many apprentice programs, and there are many resident programs. We are not unique in that way. But they are for 3 months or 5 months or 4 months, and even if they're 9 months, very rarely does the apprenticeship or the residency include only leading roles. And that's what ours does. In addition to we do 4 productions a year. We do 9 performances of each. The rest of the time, we have one of the biggest opera in-school outreach programs in the country. And so they are performing all year. In a year's time, they have about 100, if not more, 100 performances. After that, after we had just sent 2 out into the world, 3 out into the world, after that much experience, you are ready to compete in this rather difficult field. So in that way, it is unique. We only have 6 resident artists of this type, but we will have 10. What I'm hoping is that other theaters will start this too.
Well, I had heard you say a number of times that your idea is to develop young California singers and export them to other places.
Actually, that's in our mission statement. It's primarily for California residents. Quite parochial, I'd say, because I was a Californian and I had to take quite a long route before I came back to America, even.
Irene Dalis, thank you very much for coming down and being a guest this morning on the morning concert. It was a joy having you here, and I can only say I wish we had more of your recordings to play. And if some do become available, please come back and see us again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.